On April 5th, 3 words were posted: "We got him." What the documented record shows beneath those 3 words is the story this brief is about.
On the morning of April 5th, President Trump posted 3 words on Truth Social. "We got him!" Capital letters. Exclamation point. The coverage that followed described it as one of the most daring rescue operations in American military history. That characterization is not wrong. What happened in the mountains of southwest Iran over 36 hours is, by any operational standard, a significant military achievement. The bravery of the people who executed it is not in question. I want to be direct about that before anything else. What is in question, what the documented record forces us to examine, is this. The operation the rescue concluded was not described to the American public in full. The equipment that was destroyed inside Iranian territory was not enumerated. The geography of the original mission was not explained. The system that brought down the aircraft has not been publicly identified. And the chain of command that made the decision to fly a deep strike aircraft 300 to 400 miles into Iranian territory was, as of the day before the shoot-down, not the same chain of command that existed 1 week prior. The rescue was real. The story that surrounded it was incomplete. And the distance between those two things is what this brief is about.
This is Stratford Brief. Let's get into it. Let me establish what the documented record actually shows, because the sequence of events matters here time, and the sequence is more complex than the rescue narrative presented.
On April 3, 2026, a United States Air Force F-15E Strike Eagle, belonging to the 494th Fighter Squadron of the 48th Fighter Wing, was shot down over southwest Iran. The aircraft was identified by its tail markings, a red flash consistent with the Panthers, the 494th's designation, confirmed by multiple aviation analysts, including Justin Bronk of the Royal United Services Institute, working from Iranian state media photographs of the wreckage. The 48th Fighter Wing is based at RAF Lakenheath in Suffolk, England. It is the only F-15 wing in Europe. The 494th had no previous combat loss recorded in the Middle East theater before April 3rd. Both crew members ejected. The pilot was recovered within hours of the shoot-down, during an initial rescue operation that itself came at cost. 2 HH-60WW Jolly Green Tonu combat search and rescue helicopters took Iranian ground fire during that first extraction. Several crew members were wounded. An A-10 Warthog providing close air support to the rescue was also hit by enemy fire, managed to reach Kuwaiti airspace, where the pilot ejected before the aircraft went down. The weapons systems officer, a colonel, a senior commissioned officer, was not recovered in that initial operation. He had separated from the pilot on the ground. He made radio contact with American forces through an encrypted communication device and activated his emergency beacon. Then he moved. He climbed into the Zagros Mountains, ascending to a ridgeline approximately 7,000 feet above sea level. He had a pistol, a communication device, and a tracking beacon. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Basij militia units, and armed tribesmen began an organized manhunt. Iranian television broadcast a reward for his capture: $60,000, in a part of Iran described by the New York Times as less supportive of the regime. That detail matters. It suggests the local population's cooperation with the IRGC's search was not assumed to be guaranteed. The CIA would later exploit that ambiguity. For 36 hours, that was the operational picture. A United States colonel hidden in a mountain crevice with a pistol and a radio. The institutional machinery of the most powerful military on Earth pointed at a single man in the Zagros Range. The IRGC closing in. That is the documented foundation. Now let me tell you what the rescue actually involved, what the record shows about what it cost, and what the questions are that the official narrative has not answered. Before we go deeper into what the operational record shows, if this is the kind of analysis you have been looking for, subscribe to Stratford Brief and turn on notifications. We don't report what happened. We report what it means, who decided it, and what the documented record actually shows. New brief every day. Let's continue. The official narrative, as delivered by the president and carried by every major outlet in the country, has an internal logic I want to present completely and fairly.
That is the methodology here. You cannot understand why an official position fails without understanding what it was arguing in the first place.
The argument went as follows. A brave American officer was shot down in enemy territory. The administration immediately mobilized its full arsenal: special operations forces, the CIA, intelligence assets from an allied nation, dozens of aircraft, and the direct personal attention of the commander-in-chief, who remained in the Oval Office and Situation Room throughout. The CIA launched a sophisticated deception campaign that confused Iranian search forces. The officer's precise location was identified through what officials described only as unique capabilities. Special operations commandos were inserted into the mountains of southwest Iran. There was a firefight. The colonel was recovered. No Americans died in the rescue. Trump described it as one of the most daring search and rescue operations in U.S. history. He was not overstating the complexity. The operation involved, by multiple accounts, hundreds of American military and intelligence personnel. It required special operations aircraft to land at a forward airstrip inside Iranian territory. It involved MQ-9 Reaper drones striking Iranian personnel who came within 3 kilometers of the evading officer. It required close air support aircraft bombing roads leading to the extraction zone to prevent Iranian reaction forces from reaching the site. That is a large, complex, multi-domain operation. Its success, measured by the return of the officer alive, is documented. The administration's further claim, the one that requires examination, was that the operation demonstrated American air dominance over Iran, that the United States could enter Iranian airspace at will, conduct ground operations on Iranian soil, and extract its personnel without loss of life. Trump said it. Hegseth amplified it. The machinery of official communication repeated it. The rescue succeeded. No Americans died in the rescue operation itself. Both of those things are true. The question is whether those facts, as stated, represent the complete operational picture. And the answer, when you read the documented record across ABC News, The Wall Street Journal, The War Zone, Axios, and The Aviationist, all of whom reported specific operational details from named or positioned sources, is that they do not. Let me go through the operational record methodically, because the details accumulate in a specific direction. According to ABC News, confirmed by The Wall Street Journal, and corroborated in detail by the War Zone and SOF News, the rescue of the WSO involved 2 MC-130J Commando II special operations transport aircraft that landed at a forward airstrip inside Iranian territory, geolocated by open-source intelligence analysts near Isfahan. Those 2 aircraft experienced mechanical failures on the airstrip. They became disabled. The decision was made to destroy them in place. American forces blew up 2 MC-130Js on Iranian soil to prevent their capture. Additionally, 4 MH-6 Little Bird helicopters used to move commandos between the airstrip and the mountain ridgeline where the colonel was located were also destroyed. 3 additional MC-130Js had to be launched to extract all American personnel from the site. I want to stop here and say something directly, because this is the kind of detail that gets processed too quickly. 2 MC-130J Commando II aircraft are not equipment in the conventional sense. They are among the most sophisticated and classified special operations airframes in the American inventory. Each one costs approximately $80 to $90 million. They carry signals intelligence packages, electronic warfare systems, and mission-specific classified equipment whose exact specifications are not in the public domain. They are destroyed rather than allowed to fall into adversary hands. For the same reason the SR-71 carried a self-destruct mechanism, because their capture would be a collection windfall for a sophisticated adversary. That the United States was willing to destroy 2 of them on Iranian soil tells you something about the operational calculus the planners were working with. It is not in the official narrative. The total equipment account for April 3rd and 4th, drawn from the documented record across multiple outlets. 1 F-15E Strike Eagle lost to enemy fire. 1 A-10 Warthog lost after taking enemy fire, crashed in Kuwait. 2 HH-60W Jolly Green de Sorusu helicopters damaged by Iranian ground fire during the first rescue, crew members wounded.
I want to present the official narrative completely and fairly before I examine what the documents show. You cannot understand why a position failed without understanding what it was arguing.
2 MC-130J Commando II aircraft destroyed by American forces on Iranian soil. 4 MH-6 Little Bird helicopters destroyed by American forces. That is 10 aircraft across 2 days of operations, with crew members wounded in the initial rescue attempt. The public statement from the administration described the successful rescue and noted that no Americans were killed or wounded in the WSO's recovery. The equipment losses were not part of that statement. Now, I want to turn to the detail I have been sitting with for 2 days, and that I have not seen adequately addressed in any of the coverage, including in outlets that reported on the rescue in significant operational detail. The forward airstrip where the MC-130Js were disabled, the temporary landing zone established inside Iranian territory for this operation, was geolocated by open-source intelligence analysts, as reported by the Aviationist, near Isfahan. Let me be precise about what that means geographically. Isfahan is not in southwest Iran, where the F-15E went down. Isfahan is in central Iran. Isfahan hosts nuclear facilities. It hosts missile production sites. It was home to Iran's F-14 Tomcat fleet before the war began. Isfahan is, in the specific language of the stated strategic objectives of this conflict, a target. And American Special Operations aircraft landed near it during this rescue operation. Whether that forward position was selected because of the WSO's location, because of something else entirely, or because of reasons that remain classified, the documented record does not resolve. What it does establish is that the United States maintained a temporary airstrip near Iranian nuclear infrastructure during an active rescue mission. That is a fact. Its implications are a question. The CIA's role deserves the same level of precision. According to senior administration officials speaking on record to Axios, ABC News, and The Washington Post, the agency launched what they called a deception campaign, spreading false information inside Iran that both crew members had already been recovered and were being moved toward a coastal maritime exfiltration. This pulled Iranian search elements away from the actual location. The CIA then identified the colonel's precise position using what officials described as unique capabilities, and passed his coordinates to the Pentagon and White House. I want to observe something about the disclosure of this information. Intelligence agencies do not typically volunteer the existence of active psychological operations inside foreign territories. The decision to describe this one, in detail, to multiple major news organizations in real time, that decision was made by people who understood exactly what they were disclosing and why. The operational detail served a function beyond information. It served the narrative. The distinction matters because it tells you something about the relationship between the operation and the story being told about it. Finally, Israel. CNN, sourcing 2 Israeli officials, reported that Israel postponed planned strikes inside Iran to avoid interfering with the American rescue operation and provided intelligence support to the mission. The Pentagon did not confirm this, but the detail appears across multiple outlets through Israeli sourcing, and it raises a question the official narrative has not engaged with. If Israel was providing real-time intelligence to support an American combat operation inside Iran, what does that tell us about the degree of operational intelligence integration between the two militaries? And who held the authority to accept that intelligence, process it, and act on it? On April 3rd and 4th, after the events of April 2nd that I will address in the next block, every military operation has a theory of change, a mechanism by which the action is supposed to produce a specific outcome. The shoot-down of the F-15E raises a question that has not appeared in the official communications. What was a deep strike aircraft doing in the Chaharmahal and Bakhtiari province of southwest Iran? Let me be precise about what I can and cannot establish here. The specific mission the 494th's F-15E was prosecuting at the time of the shoot-down is classified. U.S. Central Command has not publicly described the target or the mission profile. What I can establish from the public record is the aircraft type, the squadron, the geography, and what those 3 things tell us when considered together. The F-15E Strike Eagle is a deep strike platform. The 494th Fighter Squadron's documented mission profile, described in its own publicly available unit history on the Air Force website, lists its primary capabilities as strategic attack, interdiction, and counter-air missions. It is equipped with precision-guided munitions designed for deep penetration of defended airspace. The 494th is not a close air support unit. It is not an interdiction unit designed to work near Iranian borders. when the 494th deploys a Strike Eagle deep into Iranian territory, the architecture of the mission, the planning, the routing, the tanker support, the coordination, is consistent with a specific category of target. The province where the aircraft was shot down sits at the western edge of the Zagros mountain range. To its east lies Isfahan. To its north, the mountain systems that protect Iranian strategic infrastructure. Defense analysts cited by SOF News have identified 3 candidate systems capable of engaging an F-15E at altitude in that geography: Iran's domestically produced Bavar 373 long-range surface-to-air missile, the Russian-supplied S-300, and the shoulder-fired 9K333 Verba infrared man-pads. The Bavar 373 is the system with the engagement envelope most consistent with the altitude and location of the shoot-down. If it successfully engaged and destroyed an advanced 4th-generation American strike aircraft at altitude, that is a data point about Iran's integrated air defense capability that contradicts the administration's stated assessment of the operational picture. I spent enough time in rooms where capability briefings happen to recognize what a managed number looks like, and the phrase unchecked air dominance, repeated in official communications in the weeks before April 3rd, is a phrase that the documented events of April 3rd make more difficult to sustain. An F-15E lost to enemy fire. An A-10 downed by enemy fire the same day. 2 HH-60 helicopters damaged by ground fire during the first rescue. These are not the operational signature of unchecked dominance. They are the operational signature of a contested air environment. The characterization and the record are not the same thing. And the decision-making that produced the April 3rd mission was made under the characterization, not under the record. This is the block I want to handle with the most care, because I want to be analytically precise about what "who benefits" means in this context. It does not mean who caused the events. It means which institutional actors are in a stronger position as a result of how the narrative was shaped. Those are different questions. Let me describe the 7 days between March 29th and April 5th. Because context is the difference between understanding and assumption. The 48-hour ultimatum Trump issued to Iran, demanding the full opening of the Strait of Hormuz, expired without compliance. Iran rejected it publicly, with the Central Military Command describing it in a statement to state media as helpless, nervous, unbalanced, and stupid. The threatened infrastructure destruction implied by the ultimatum did not materialize within the time frame stated. The ultimatum was issued. It was rejected. The stated consequences did not follow on the stated timeline. That is what happened. In the same week, 40 nations convened under British diplomatic leadership to discuss reopening the Strait of Hormuz, without the United States or Israel present. The British Foreign Secretary said, on the record, that the rest of the world had been left to manage the consequences of the Iran war. On April 2nd, Hegseth asked the Army's Chief of Staff, a 4-star general confirmed by the Senate 96-1, with 4 decades of service, to retire immediately. He also fired 2 other senior generals. Defense officials told Axios that the Army's senior leadership was blindsided by the announcement, learning of it when the Pentagon made it public. One official described the firing of a general who was, at that moment, coordinating the movement of troops to the Iranian theater as insane. That is not Stratford Brief's language. It is the language of a U.S. official speaking to a named outlet. Planet Labs announced it would black out all satellite imagery of Iran retroactively to March 9th, eliminating independent visual verification of any military outcome in the region for the duration of the war. That is the documented week, and at the end of it, the rescue of the WSO produced what it produced. The only story of those 7 days that the administration could characterize as an unambiguous, unconditional, publicly verifiable American success. We got him! Capital letters. The machinery of official communication amplified it with a speed and a scale that no other development in that week received. I am not suggesting the rescue was manufactured. The sequence of events made it necessary. The people who executed it did so under fire. None of that is in dispute. What I am observing is that the institutional beneficiary of the rescue narrative, the entity whose position at the end of April 5th was meaningfully stronger than its position at the beginning of April 3rd, was an administration that had experienced one of its most consequential weeks of the conflict. The rescue provided cover, not because anyone planned it that way, because in wartime, the story that can be told becomes the story that is told, and the story that cannot be told, the equipment losses, the forward airstrip near Isfahan, the expired ultimatum, the 40 nations meeting without Washington, does not disappear because it is not being told. It waits. The historical parallel I keep returning to, and I want to be careful about how I use it, because the outcomes are different in ways that matter, is Operation Eagle Claw, April 24th and 25th, 1980. The Carter administration's attempt to rescue 52 American hostages from the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. 8 RH-53D Sea Stallion helicopters launched from the USS Nimitz. 3 experienced mechanical failures before reaching the Iranian desert staging area designated Desert 1. The abort decision was made. During the abort, a helicopter collided with a C-130 transport aircraft on the ground. 8 Americans were killed. Classified materials were left at the site and subsequently displayed publicly by Iranian authorities. What the Carter administration said at the time was that the mission failed due to unexpected equipment failures, a sequence of mechanical problems that could not have been anticipated. What Admiral James Holloway's subsequent investigation actually found was a systemic set of planning failures, insufficient redundancy, inadequate rehearsal of contingency procedures, command and control problems at the joint level, a mission architecture that had not been designed to absorb the number of equipment failures that any complex operation into contested territory should be planned to accommodate. The Holloway report led to the most significant restructuring of American special operations in the 20th century. It contributed directly to the establishment of U.S. Special Operations Command in 1987. The 2026 rescue in the Zagros Mountains involved 2 MC-130J Commando II transport aircraft that became disabled at a forward airstrip inside Iranian territory. The U.S. destroyed them in place. Additional aircraft were launched to extract all personnel. The mission succeeded. No American involved in the rescue died. That is the critical and genuine difference. SOCOM's contingency planning is measurably better than what existed in 1980. The institutions that Eagle Claw's failure built are functioning. What is structurally similar, and the similarity is precise enough to be analytically significant, is the forward position failure in Iranian territory and the requirement for contingency aircraft to complete the extraction. In 1980, the contingency aircraft were never needed because the mission was aborted. In 2026, they were needed, and they arrived. That institutional improvement is real, and it is the result of 46 years of investment in exactly this kind of capability. The question the precedent raises is not about the rescue's execution. It is about the decision architecture that produced the original mission, the one the rescue was required to resolve. Eagle Claw was authorized through a specific chain of command, with specific institutional checks on the planning process. Some of those checks, as Holloway documented, failed. In 2026, the mission that placed an F-15E in Chaharmahal in Bakhtiari province was authorized through a chain of command that, as of April 2nd, had just had 3 of its senior uniformed members removed at the Secretary's direction. The institutional parallel is not about the crash. It is about the conditions under which the mission was planned and approved. The question that follows from everything in this brief is not whether to credit the rescue as a success. It is what the rescue reveals about the trajectory of this conflict, and what the next decision points actually require to be true to work. If the operational picture described by the administration, air dominance, degraded Iranian capability, a conflict approaching its conclusion, is being used as the planning basis for escalated operations, and if the documented record of April 3rd shows that an F-15E was shot down, an A-10 was lost, 2 CSR helicopters were damaged, and 6 additional aircraft were destroyed on or near Iranian soil, then the gap between the planning assumption and the operational reality is not a communications problem. It is a strategic one. The indicator to watch is the Pentagon's response to the specific questions the documented record raises. Has the system that brought down the F-15E been identified and publicly assessed? Has the mission profile of the aircraft been described to the relevant congressional committees in any form? Has the equipment loss from the rescue operation been incorporated into any publicly stated assessment of operational costs? As of this recording, the answer to all three is no. If that silence holds through the week, if Monday's press conference produces the narrative clarity of "we got him" without addressing the operational record beneath it, then the documented record will continue to be doing a different job than the official one. The timeline compresses significantly if the administration follows through on the infrastructure threats that were not executed during the 48-hour ultimatum window. Striking Iranian power generation or water desalination facilities crosses a threshold that international law scholars, including those cited by NPR during the ultimatum period, have described explicitly. That dimension is not abstract. It is the kind of precedent that affects Allied support in ways that compound. Spain, France, and Italy have already restricted American use of bases and airspace. The alliance architecture available for that category of escalation is not the alliance architecture that existed at the start of Operation Epic Fury. The question this brief cannot answer, and the one Stratford Brief will be watching, is whether the decision to escalate to infrastructure targeting will be made by the same institutional architecture that made the April 3rd mission decision, and whether the congressional oversight mechanisms that are supposed to check that decision are currently functioning with full access to the operational picture. The satellite imagery that would allow independent verification of outcomes has been blacked out retroactively. The senior uniformed officers who would typically channel professional military assessment through formal channels have been removed. The formal briefing mechanisms have not been convened to address the April 3rd losses. None of those facts resolve the question of what comes next. But together, they tell you something about the information environment inside which the next decision will be made. And that environment matters as much as the decision itself. Based on what the documented record shows, the aircraft destroyed inside Iran, the geography of the original mission, the forward airstrip near Isfahan, the CIA operation whose disclosure served a narrative function, the equipment losses that were not included in the official statement, and the command environment in which the April 3rd mission was authorized. The picture that emerges is not the picture contained in 3 words and an exclamation point. The rescue succeeded. A colonel is alive because hundreds of American professionals did something genuinely extraordinary in the Zagros Mountains. That is true, and it matters. It should be acknowledged without reservation. What should also be acknowledged, and what the institutional machinery has not acknowledged, is that the complete operational account of April 3rd and 4th, set against the week that surrounded it, tells a story about the trajectory of this conflict that the narrative of success does not resolve. Equipment destroyed. A forward position established and abandoned near Iranian nuclear infrastructure. An air defense system that successfully engaged a 4th-generation American strike aircraft. A command structure with 3 fewer senior officers than it had 5 days earlier. And a satellite network blacked out retroactively, eliminating the independent visual record of what happened and where. The institutional judgment I draw from that record is this: an administration managing a conflict under conditions of information asymmetry, where the public narrative is systematically less complete than the operational record, is not an unusual condition in wartime. What is unusual is the degree to which the mechanisms that normally correct that asymmetry, oversight, professional military assessment, independent verification, are currently constrained. That constraint has consequences. Not immediately. Not necessarily in the form of a single decisive failure, but in the form of decisions made in environments where the feedback between reality and policy has been reduced. That reduction is always a risk. The documented record of this week suggests it is more than a theoretical one. The question I am watching is whether Monday's press conference provides the operational detail the public statement did not. If it does, the institutional machinery is functioning. If it doesn't, the gap between the documented record and the official one will have grown by 1 more week, and we will report what that gap contains.
The mainstream coverage tells you what happened. This channel tells you what it means. New brief tomorrow. Stay sharp.